We welcome in Ron Darling, who you'll all hear soon enough if things move in the right direction. Ron, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. I'm sure a lot of people are happy that they haven't had to hear me, but I'm coming back.
No, they're all missing you, Ron. They want you to come back. First of all, I mean, from what you've heard and what
Yeah.
you believe your role will be, and considering what you've gone through health-wise, are you comfortable with everything?
Um, well, am I comfortable? That's a great question right off the bat. I would say that I've been more comfortable over a lot of different things. This is certainly doesn't make me 100% comfortable, but Mike, this is kind of what we do, and I call games, and the players play games, and I thought I heard a quote from Adam Silver, or read a quote from Adam Silver today, saying that we are going to be playing sports with the virus. I mean, we've got to learn to play sports with the virus out there. And I guess that's kind of what we're all going to be doing, because people are going to get sick. And, you've got to make your own personal decision. But, at the end of the day, that's what I do. I call games.
Now, you will probably, what I've heard so far is you guys will
Yeah.
probably be up in the booth, and then you won't be on the road with the team. You'll be calling it from a studio, right?
Yeah, they want to eliminate, as many moving parts and people traveling, of course. So we'll be calling the home games from Citi Field.
Right.
And Mike, I think what we're going to do is we're going to be calling the away games from Citi
Oh,
Field
okay, that
too.
makes sense. Okay, so you'll be in the
Yeah,
same
so
place for both. Okay.
yeah, so it'll be the truck out there in the booth, and we'll just, I guess we'll do like old time radio. We'll have, drums and bands or whatever
Yes.
to make some noise.
Yeah, like the old days when they used to recreate the games. Les
That's
Kiter and those guys.
that's
Absolutely.
right.
But so that's before your time, Ron. So you shouldn't even know about that stuff. All right. But Ron's a good historian, so he does. All right. Let me get into it from the standpoint of the team.
Yeah.
Put yourself back as a player. What do you think is the player's trepidation more occupational, or is it more about health?
I don't think it's occupational. I think the guys for the most part are going to be ready to go. Now you're certainly going to have outliers, guys that have said they've done a lot and have done really very little during this time.
Right.
That's always the case. It doesn't matter what profession it is. That's always going to be the case. But for the most part, I think the guys are going to be ready to go, and I think you're going to have a surprisingly A-type product on the field right away. I
Interesting.
really do.
Okay.
But as far as
Do
the
you
health,
think
I
the
think
players have Do you think they have a very heavy feeling about the risk here, or do you think it's not as pronounced because of their age?
well, I think no. I think because of their age and of course the health that they're in, other than people that are have some pre-existing conditions,
Right.
I think they will feel pretty confident that as far as the baseball is concerned, and I'm talking about the travel, going to the ballpark, all of those things, I think are going to be under the protocol. And I saw the protocol. It's very extensive, very thorough. So I think that's going to be great. The only problem, Mike, is how serious the ball players take it when they go home.
Right.
How serious do their families take it
Right.
during the day?
Right.
That is going to be the big,
Right.
that's what's going to change whether people get sick or a lot of people get sick.
Right, and that's what has happened with, say, Clemson football or some of the golfers, is that they went out in the community when they weren't playing golf or weren't playing football, and that's obviously some of the issues. That's why you had 37 players test positive for Clemson football already. 37 players. So I mean,
Yeah.
amazingly, what you do with the rest of your time is going to be critical, obviously. Right, from a pitching standpoint, let me start with starting pitchers.
Okay.
Is it spring training like, or will this be very different than spring training like in preparation?
I think it'll be a little of each. It'll be spring training like, absolutely, because teams are going to get their pitches ready like they always have traditionally. But I do think it's going to be on the individual pitcher, whoever that is, to be able to look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, how much did I do? How ready am I to go? And I've got to be able to say to myself, occasionally I might have to pull back on the throttle. I think that it takes a real strong personality, a very bright person to do that, because your inclination is to rush, and be ready. and that's just the opposite thing that you can do. I think you really have to measure yourself, wake up in the morning, how do you feel, where do you have pain, this or that, and move yourself into a place where you are really concentrating, if you're DeGrom, on July 23rd or 24th. That's your look to. And I think that with the pitchers' knowledge of himself and, of course, the team taking care of them, you might see some 5-6 innings. Or you might see a guy like DeGrom cruising, but his pitch count's up and leaving after 4 2/3. That could happen in this game the first couple of weeks.
We're talking with Ron Darling. Ron, we always hear about team pitching depth and how much pitching an organization has. This year, there are going to be more pitchers that are going to be called on. There are going to be more pitchers that are going to be utilized with these rosters. So pitching depth is going to be at a premium. How much do you think that will be different team to team, or do you think when you're getting into the 14th and 15th pitcher that are going to be carried, you think the quality will differ team to team, or you think it'll be very comparable team to team?
No, I think it certainly will differ. The one thing that won't change, though, Mike, is that, and probably a lot of people disagree with me on this one, but for a majority or for a myriad of reasons, every team, let's say they have 15 pitchers going into this thing. There's going to be 30 players on the roster when you play each and every game in the first couple of weeks. If you have 15 pitchers, Mike, realistically, 10 of them are major league pitchers. And I say that not because the other 5 pitchers are not good. We're talking about they could have it could be an older pitcher who's not quite ready. It could be a younger pitcher who hasn't gotten enough seasoning. It could be a pitcher pitching with injury. My knowledge of the game is that it doesn't matter how many added pitchers you add. There's really 10 guys you can count on, and that'll always be the case. So it's going to get down to how strong you are with those 10, and the next 2, maybe 3 guys. Are they 4A? Are they Major League? Are they AAA? That I think the teams that have Detroit's teams that have struggled the last couple of years. When they go to the well, they will probably have AAA guys, guys that aren't as ready. The good teams will have guys that will be able to get out at the major league level.
We're talking about Ron Darling. Ron, I've always felt that if I owned a team, I would put a premium on having the right guy in a pitching coach job because, to me, he can be invaluable. I mean, Dave Duncan was worth his weight in gold when he was in the league. Yeah. He was more valuable than the manager. I mean, so to me, it's like having that great defensive coordinator. All right, maybe he's not a head coach temperament-wise. Maybe he likes the role that he's in. But to me, right now, this year, the most important guy, I think, on almost every team is the pitching coach on how he can get a staff ready and get a staff pitching well under these conditions.
Mike, that is a great point. When you think about baseball, the hitting instructors are less now. And why is that? Almost all of these young guys have their own hitting coaches that they go to during the season and in the off season to work with. So the hitting coach is not as important, but the pitching coach still, the day-to-day nurturing these pitchers through the mental toughness it is to play a season, and even this truncated season, there's going to be so much, not only on the pitching coach to work with these guys and get them where they are 100%. But, Mike, if a guy is off a little bit, last year DeGrom, in the first maybe 6 or 7 starts, had an ERA 3.5, close to 4. You can't really afford Jacob DeGrom not to be excellent the entire year. So you're going to have to, if someone's struggling, who's one of your top tier pitchers, you're going to have to tweak it in a way and get him right quicker than you would have to, of course, over a 162-game season. If you lose 6 or 7 games in a row, which happens to most teams, Mike, over the course of a long season, if you do that over a 60-game season, that's like losing 20 in a row.
No, devastating. And that's why fast starts are going to be imperative, which is going to put a lot of pressure on pitching coaches to have their guys ready. Do you think it's going to put more pressure on the starters or a lot more pressure on the bullpen?
I think it's going to be a lot more pressure on the starters because the bullpen is interchangeable in a way. And the reason I say the starters is because what staff gets up to speed quicker or quick enough? Because let's think of the Mets, or any team you're talking about. some of their biggest strengths. The Washington Nationals are their starting pitching. If Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg are getting 15 outs a game, that's not going to help the Nationals. As soon as they can get them up to speed where they're getting 21 outs a game, where their best pitchers are out there for the longest period of time, those teams are going to be the ones that have a chance to get to 35 to 40 wins.
So in a 60-game season, are you going to push these guys to go longer early? Are we going to see teams push their key starters earlier in the season than we normally would?
I would, if that's your strength. Now, there's going to be some teams who use openers.
Well, don't have that, but let's say the teams that do have the good guys, you think they're going to push those guys early this year? Because it's only 60 games. You want to get out fast if you can help it.
I would. I know that that's counterintuitive to health and all those kind of things, but what are you trying to do here? I mean, you're trying to win, right? You're trying to get in the postseason, and the only way to do that is to make sure your best players are playing all the time. We're also going to see it on the guys playing every day. I mean, who's going to take a day off? Can't take any days off. In the past, you've had guys that say, well, I play 6 days a week or 5 days a week. I'd like a blow here or there. But now I think that you've got to have the mindset, if you're an elite player, that you have to play 60 games or close to it.
Well, you look at it this way. If you're 5-10 after 15 games, I mean, you're up against it. You've already put yourself in a deep hole. You don't want to be 5 games under 500 in this season. You really don't. You don't want to be on. You don't want to be 5 games under 500 at any point in this thing. It's too hard to come back. It's going to take you 10 games just to get back from that.
Well, think of the Nationals last year were 19-31 after 50.
You wouldn't overcome that. You can't overcome that. That's impossible. Yes.
There's no chance. I mean, you might be able to tread water for the first 20 games at 10-10, but you can't do much less than that, because what's going to happen, Mike, is that you're going to have teams that aren't over a 162-game season a good team. But they're going to get off to a quick start. They're going to maybe have a young team. Let's say the Chicago White Sox.
Well,
right?
It's funny you mentioned them, because I asked 2 people to give me in baseball teams that they thought could jump out that aren't that good and hide. And the 2 teams people gave me were the White Sox and the Texas Rangers.
Yeah. And, remember the Rangers last year had a great first half under Chris Woodward, their manager, and then kind of faltered at the end. So they got off to a quick start. And then the White Sox have talent galore. And if they start believing in themselves a year or 2 early, they could really surprise you. So, we're going to have teams that over a 162-game schedule might not traditionally be able to stay with the pack. But anyone, I mean anyone, we're going to have, out of the 10 teams to make the postseason, there'll be 2 where you're going to shake your head and say, really? They're in the postseason? That is going to happen.
Hey, you jump out 10-2, you're in pretty good shape in this thing. You really are. I mean, if you jump out 10-2, which is going to be 1/5 of the season, that's already putting 1/5 of the season behind you. I mean, that's it. When you think about it, that's a lot. That's a great start if you can do it. So from that standpoint, getting out of the box quick, what is the key in your mind for the Mets to get out of the box quick?
The key for them is that they're going to have to hit a ton. They have said that their lineup is solid from top to bottom, and I think it is. But they can't afford to come out of the blocks scoring 2 or 3 runs a game. They've got to come out and punish people. Their lineup, and I know they've always been a team that's been pitching rich, and they've relied on their pitching, and they still are going to rely a lot on their starters. But they have a lineup that should really score some runs. And if they do that, then I think they'll get off to a quick start. If they struggle offensively early, then I don't think they will.
People ask me, who does it help, good teams or bad teams? It clearly helps the inferior teams, because over 162 games, your talent's going to show, your depth is going to show. The cream's going to come to the top. Over a third of a season, which is really what this is, you know what? You might not fire, and somebody might get out 15-5 and never look back. So I think it clearly helps the teams that aren't as talented.
I think it helps the teams.
Do you think it helps?
Talented.
Let me ask you one other one quick, though. Do you think it helps the younger team or the older team?
I think it helps the younger team, because I think sometimes just energy alone, Mike, to be able to come back and play. I mean, it's going to be 60 games in 66 days. So there's not going to be any rest for these guys. So I think you're going to have a surprise a young team that's going to get out there. Second, I think that as far as jumping out and getting out there, a lot of it has to do with the schedule too. The Mets have to play the Yankees, the Rays, the Red Sox. That doesn't help a lot. So it depends a lot on your divisions. If you're playing in the Central, you might have a little easy go of it occasionally when you have to face.
That's really unfair for the Mets when you think about it. It really is.
Really? Right?
Yes, because they do. The Red Sox aren't as good, but they still get hurt by dealing with the Rays, who are very good, and the Yankees, who could be exceptional. I mean, so that definitely hurts them. There's no question.
I mean, yeah. Other than when the Mets face the O's and the Marlins, it'll be a toss-up every night, right?
Absolutely. And do you, if you had to design a pitching staff, would you want one with a deeper starting staff right now, or would you take one that had a really good deep bullpen with a major closer?
I'd like two things. I'd like a really deep bullpen with just a lock solid closer. But I'd also want a manager who knows how to use the bullpen. I think that's going to be really
Joe Girardi.
That came to mind. I talked to
great
Tom
bullpen, greatest edge he has, I think, as a manager is he's great with the bullpen.
I totally agree. I talked to Tom McCarthy, who does the TV for Philadelphia, and I said they have one of the big advantages because Girardi is going to know exactly when to pull the trigger. And, there's going to be a lot of managers that I think are going to still think this is a traditional kind of schedule and going to be hemming and hawing. He won't. He will go to that phone. He'll go to it often, and he'll play every game like the seventh game. And I know there's been some criticism in the past for Joe saying, he plays every game like the seventh game. Well, they are like that. In this schedule, it really plays to his strength. One
thing he never did, though, he never abused pitchers, though. Torre sometimes would ride a pitcher to him being tired. He'd ride the same guy. That was a fault of Joe's. It was not a fault of Girardi's. Girardi had other faults, but his fault, he was very good at never abusing his pitchers. Now, in this case, you might have to abuse your pitchers a little bit this year.
Yeah, I think that you're going to have to ask your pitchers to get more outs than they're used to early in a season, even though it's in July. I mean, Betances coming off an injury last year with the Mets, he might be asked to do what he did in his heyday with the Yankees, and that's get 4 or 5 outs in the course of a ball game. So, it's kind of I know it's a cliche, but it really is all hands on deck. If you're going to play, there's no excuse. You can't say, hey, we're starting late, we're only playing 60 games, whatever. You've got to be able to mentally get yourself in a place that this is the last 2 months of the season, and we've got to go 40-20. Somehow, some way, we've got to go 40-20.
You think the players, I think the managers understand this. Do you think the players buy into this right now, or are they going to look at it? You think they're going to look at it like that going into the season? Do you think that's something that has to be sold to them, or you think they understand that?
Well, you hope they understand it, but I think those managers that have the ability to communicate with their players and give them little things that they can think about that get them in that right spot to be grinding every day. The great players are going to grind it. You don't have to worry about those guys. But, there are those guys that you have to really pull along with you. And the managers that communicate the best are the ones that are going to be able to have a full team effort.
Utilization of guys in the pen for some of the guys on the Mets who are versatile. Yeah. Do you see their roles changing this year?
I see this, Mike, is that you have a 2-game maximum to not be good. If you're not good for 2 games in a row, you're down at the bottom of the totem pole. So I think it's going to be really one of those scrums for these relievers to get to the top of the hill or the top man in that bullpen. And if you have two bad games, you go to the bottom.
So you don't get to work out your problems this year in the games, that's for sure.
You're going to have to work it out with a psychiatrist or a psychologist or someone. You're not going to be able to work it on the field or with your teammates. It's just there's too much on the line.
How about riding players that are in slumps?
Well, that's something, if it's Bryce Harper or Mike Trout or Yelich or guys like that.
What if it's a guy that you don't know if he's getting old or not? One of those kind of guys.
Or maybe like a Robinson Cano or someone like that. I would say that you cannot you've got to let all your players know that you are the manager. You're in charge of getting this team to the postseason, and I hope no one takes anything personal, because there's not going to be anything personal here. What we're going to do is we're going to get to the postseason, and we're going to get there with the players that are playing the best.
So it's a meritocracy this year.
100%. Doesn't matter. You know how, Mike, there's been in the past, a guy's making a certain amount of money, he's got to play.
Yep.
A guy's got a certain
reputation.
Baseball card, he's got to play. I think you're doing yourself and your team a disservice if you don't play the hot hand.
So it's a meritocracy. Do you think that does that mean these guys from now until the first game, do they have to train differently than they would for a normal spring training?
No, I think that spring training is too long anyways, Mike. I think 3 weeks.
So they can get ready. In your mind, they can be ready anyway.
100% they can get ready. Spring training has evolved because, there's real money that is made in spring training. All the ballparks are sold out, and people love coming to the games and bringing their family down. But as far as getting ready for a season, if you're in shape when you come to Yankee Stadium or Citi Field, 3 weeks is plenty.
All right, knowing what you know about the Mets and plugging them into this very, very different season, what are your expectations?
My expectations that they're a postseason team. They're a team that has a lineup now, and I'm not even counting Cespedes as being 100% and being a DH all through the year, the 60-game season. I think they have a lineup that, for the first time in quite some time, maybe since the 2006 team, a lineup that can really score runs. And I think you're going to have to score runs because don't forget, you're not going to always be playing those National League East games where it's 3-1, 4-2. You're going to be playing the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Rays.
The high-scoring games. Yep.
You're going to have to slug.
Yep.
And if you don't slug, you're going to be left behind.
Very interesting. Ron, pleasure.
It'll be interesting. And the last thing, Mike, it'll be interesting what ball they use. Because,
I don't think they'll use the Super Bowl again this year. I don't think they will.
Okay, good. I hope not.
That's what I think. Now, listen, I think it'll be more the postseason ball last year, which clearly they changed the ball for the postseason. Everybody said it. Anyone you talked to said the ball that was going out in the regular season was not the same ball in the postseason. Everyone was saying it. So maybe they found a happy medium with the ball this year. I don't think they go to the Super Bowl this year. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe they think it's box office. They want to go to the Super Bowl. You never know.
Hey, we'll have this conversation a week into the season. I'll tell you which one they're using.
All right, Ron, pleasure. I hope you're doing well. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Ron Darling, back after this.